Hey guys, Andrew here, Cmp Attachments. Today we're going to do a diverter install, this grapple, this cat mini excavator. For those of you who have single auxiliary hydraulics, we have an option for that. So let's go over some of the required tools. Basically just a basic tool set. A few unique things would be a test light, some way to heat shrink the terminals, and then your wire cutter. We'll need some drills, socket set, some wrenches. Pretty basic. And then what comes in the kit is this will be your wire harness that goes from the grapple up into the cab of the machine. We also provide some zip ties. This is the push button switch that'll go inside your joystick. And then we got a inline fuse holder with a 15 amp fuse, some ring terminals, and some butt connectors. So let's get to work. All right, so I always like to start on the grapple side and work my way towards the cab. If you look on this side, you'll see when you get the grapple, it'll come with the 2-pin Deutsch connector, and we put that right at the quick coupler. So that way, when you unhook your hydraulics, you also see this electrical connector here. So you kind of get your head straight to unhook that. So we are gonna just start running this from our quick couplers up into the cab. And I usually just find one of the main hoses. We'll come back and we'll zip tie all this, but we'll just kind of get it roughed out first. This is usually about a 3-hour install. It's a little bit easier on machines that don't have cabs if you just have an open station. So now that we kind of got it close down on this end, we'll get some zip ties and we'll get her tied up. We're going to leave a little bit of slack here so that you got room to grab onto it to unhook the connector. Usually try and do a zip tie about every 10-12 inches. It's important to keep this wire tied up nicely so that you're not snagging it, especially when you get into the tree work and demolition kind of stuff. When we get up to the pivot points, we want to make sure that this wire is not going to get pinched anywhere. All right, now the fun part is we're going to go ahead and get it ran through this knuckle. Sometimes this can be a bit tricky. I know that we have extra wire, so I'm going to do myself a favor and I'm going to cut some of this excess off. All right, now we're going to go ahead and just tuck some of that wire inside of there. And then we'll get that when we get into the cab, but for the meantime we want to finish getting all this buttoned up so that we can just pull it tight. Then when we get to this point, I just follow the extra slack from the hoses so we know we're not going to pull it too tight. All right, now let's jump inside of the cab. So we went ahead and we removed the rubber mat off the floor, and there's a nice little inspection panel for us here. So now that we shoved our wiring through there, now we're gonna go ahead and grab it on this side. Pretty much every one I've done underneath this seat always makes an excellent spot to make all your splices, to attach your ground. This particular machine, the fuse box is right there, so that also works out super well. And then also one other thing, when you have your inline fuse under here, it's a nice easy spot for the operator to find it if it becomes a problem. So now we're gonna try and dig our wire out of here that we shoved up underneath the cab. All right, and then we will pull the excess. And then we are gonna get our wiring ran up into this compartment. All right, so now we're good to go there. We'll leave that for now. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take apart this joystick. We'll get our switch mounted in there, run our power down from the joystick, get it down to here, and then we'll finalize everything down there. So we'll go ahead and get this joystick pulled apart. Every machine's a little bit different, but we seem to always find a way. We do also opt for an optional foot pedal switch. That would just go on the floor of your cab. All right, so if you look at this joystick, we actually have room right here to mount that. So our switch requires a 1/2-inch hole. These step bits work absolutely awesome for plastic. If you don't have one, that's fine. Just drill a small pilot hole, like a 3/16 hole first, and then just real lightly go in. With your 1/2-inch bit then. So we have, in this particular joystick, we have 2 possible spots where we could put this switch. It's kind of going to be operator preference. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with the outside one, just because then it's not quite as far of a reach. So there we got our hole. We can get our switch mounted in there now.
Can you show the hole there, Andrew?
So then that's what our switch will look like inside of there. So then we'll go ahead and slide our nut over our wires. And we'll go ahead and get that threaded on there. So now we got our wires. Every joystick I've seen usually has an extra spot for the wires. So we'll go ahead and run ours down through there. I peeled this boot up so we can get access to the other side to grab our wires. And then we can go ahead and put the joystick back together. When we get our joystick back together, we want to make sure we're not pinching any of the wires in here. And we got everything tucked in there nicely. So now that we got our joystick back together, we now have our button, so this will now select our rotate function. All right, so now we're going to grab that chunk of wire we cut off earlier, and we have to connect it to our switch and then get it down to where we're going to make the rest of our connections. So I'm going to go ahead and feed this down through the joystick. I'm going to make sure I pull enough wire down here to make sure we have enough room to make our connections. So now we know we got plenty. So I like to make this connection right up underneath the rubber cover. That way then if you ever have problems, it's easy to get at and it's not buried inside of the armrest. All right, so we grabbed 2 of the heat shrink butt connectors that are supplied in the kit. We'll use that to put our wires together here. So we want to strip back about 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So we want to strip our wires back so we got about 3/8 to 1/2 inch of wire showing. I like to twist them up so they don't fray while you're trying to put them on the butt connectors. We'll go ahead and slide that into the butt connector and we'll crimp it. I like to usually hit them twice and you know you got a good crimp. Slide them all the way in and crimp. Now we'll get our wire set up here. Make sure we leave enough slop so that our joystick can still move around. So we're going to cut this here. And then we'll peel back the rubber jacket, go about 1.5 inches back. And then we have our wires here again. Same thing, peel back about 1/2 inch. Twist them together. So we're going to go ahead and put these wires together. It does not matter which one goes to where. Basically what we have here is I like to use black as my power. So we're going to end up hooking power to this, which will hook to our switch. So now our switch will have power when we hold it, which is in turn going to send our signal back down this line, down to the boom to tell our grapple to rotate. Now I like to cut off the extra rope that's in there, get that out of our way, and then we'll heat shrink it up. So now we can go ahead and button all this back up. I think we'll just leave this wire float. There wasn't enough room to follow next to this one, so we had to run this one on the back, but that should be good. We'll go ahead and get our cover put back on there. So for this particular install, I decided to use an add a fuse. This works really good because you can pull out an existing fuse. This 15 amp fuse that's in here will go to our diverter, and then the fuse you pulled out will go in this side. We don't supply this with the kit because there's 3 different styles of fuses that are used in the machine, so we don't know which one you would need, but they're available at any auto parts store. Otherwise you can use the supplied inline fuse. What I like to usually do is steal power from your cigarette lighter, just because it's a non-essential circuit for the machine. And one of the biggest things is we want to make sure that we're using key on power. We do not want constant power, we want key on power. Those of you who are putting these selector valves in the larger machines, we definitely got to make sure if we're getting into a 24 volt that the grapple was ordered with a 24 volt coil, not a 12 volt. So we're going to put that aside and we'll go ahead and put our add a fuse in. So we are going to find the cigarette lighter and pull that fuse out. All right, so we got our fuse out and we're now just gonna verify that it is key on power. So I just got a basic test light here. This one is a little fancier, it tells you your voltage, but that is non-pertinent for this. So we'll check both sides of the fuse. I don't have any power. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the key on. And we have power now. Shut the key off, we lose power. So now we got a good spot to hook up. And now we can plop this in the other side of our Attafuse. And these things just work out really good because it's a nice clean deal. You're not tapping into any wires. So we just add that in where the existing fuse was. In this fuse panel, they were nice enough to leave us an exit out to the back where there's not a used fuse. And now we have a spot to grab our 12 volt key on power that is fused. So this wire is the one that runs down the boom. What we want to see out of this is a constant ground. And then when we hit our joystick up here, when we hit our button, when we hit it, we have our momentary power that runs down. So, being we got a nice good bolt here, I'm going to use this for my ground. So I'll go ahead and cut my wires. And then we can crimp on an eyelet to one side for our ground. And same thing here, I'm going to go back about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And we'll get the rubber jacket off there. If you notice, I was careful not to scar up the wires when I was cutting the jacket off. Get rid of our paper strands so that they're out of our way. I'm going to go ahead and use white as ground, black as power. As I mentioned before, the coils do not care what power and what ground is, so feel free to do it however you would like. Peel back about 1/2 inch. And I'm going to go ahead and get that wire twisted up. I'm going to grab an eyelet. And this will be our ground, so we're going to go ahead and crimp an eyelet on, and we'll attach it right to that bolt there. Then this other side is going to be the wire that comes back out of our joystick. So we are going to put a butt connector on this one. So now we'll grab a 13mm socket and we will take that off. I'm going to just go ahead and shrink this wire up before we throw it on there while we got the room. And we can tighten that back up. And you can really use a self-tapping screw or whatever you'd like. The goal is just to get a chassis ground there. So now we got our wire that's running up to our joystick. One end of it is going to go here. This is our wire that goes down to the boom. And then the other end of it is going to be our supplied power. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this to length to follow here, and then meet up with that. Same thing, we'll strip back about 2 inches. Get our paper out of the way. Strip back each one about 1/2 inch. And like I said, it doesn't matter what color is power and ground, whatever you choose. We'll get this guy stripped back. Now we're going to go ahead and put one butt connector on here to go to this one, and then we'll use this connector for the other. I'm going to choose the white to be our power, just so when we put these two together, then we have the black with the black. All right, now we'll go ahead and shrink wrap those. All right, now we'll go ahead and grab some zip ties and we'll just kind of tidy things up, make everything lay in there like that. We can reinstall our fuse panel cover. We will put things back together and try it out. So when we designed this wire harness, this DIN connector that is on your coil, we actually decided to go with one with a red LED light in there. And that works out as a huge diagnostics tool if you do run into problems. With the wiring running down the boom like that, when you get into demo and tree work, it is possible that you will snag it or pinch it. So this is a huge tool that you can use. If your grapple won't rotate, check this light first. So now we got the key off on the machine and we're going to look in here. Go ahead, Olaf, and press the button. We have no red light, so we've just confirmed again that we're on key on power and we will not have any battery drain. Go ahead and turn the key on and then tap the button. See, now you can see that button, that red LED lighting, so now we know we're good to go. All right, now we got everything working, so we'll go ahead and test our functions. Go ahead and make it clamp. So we have it set up so that it defaults towards the clamp. So if you get into trouble and you need to let go of something, you still always will have your clamp function. Now he's running his normal hydraulics with his right thumb for the clamp. And when he wants to run the grapple, the rotation, he's gonna hold our button with his left thumb and still run the factory hydraulics, and now it's gonna rotate. It is a push and hold, so while you're rotating, you're gonna push and hold the entire time. When you're ready to clamp, let off the thumb, and we'll be back to clamping. All right, so that's a wrap for our install. We've done our functions test. Everything works as it should. This particular install, we did a smaller machine. It is the same basic function for any size machine. The moral of the story is our wire running down the boom, we want a momentary power and a constant ground. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.